Welcome to the Speak by Design podcast, where we study personal style, message structure, and message strategy so you can become a consistently compelling force. Let's dig in. Think of a time when you were in a training or someone who was mentoring and developing you gave you an idea for how you could be better, and you changed in an instant. I can think of many times where someone looked at me and said, "Oh, you're really good at X." And I believed it in a moment, and I started acting differently. That is called a quantum leap or a quantum change. And we use that term for other types of business changes, but that's one that's incredibly personal. And you changed in an instant because you felt safe. You felt that there was a positive atmosphere, and the person who was telling you this cared about you and believed in you. And in return, you believed it was possible and you took action upon it. We would hope that any time you receive or give feedback, that this is the way it feels, and yet it doesn't. Why does feedback hurt? Feedback can hurt when you don't feel like the person who's giving it to you cares about you, believes in you, or you yourself feel confused by the feedback. Maybe you've gotten conflicting feedback in the past. A very common example of that is when somebody has told that they need to speak up more in senior leader meetings. And then they're also told that they're coming across too intense and dominating with their direct reports. That feels like two very different pieces of information, and the brain gets locked upon how can both be true. I don't trust the person who gave me this feedback. Sometimes the feedback also creates a feeling of anxiety because now the person who's receiving this feedback is scared they're going to fail. And they worry that if they mess up again, this will be even more painful, either painful emotionally or that there will be a consequence like being put on a performance improvement plan, or even worse, being counseled to leave the organization or terminated abruptly. And that fear becomes debilitating, and they usually end up failing because they're so afraid of failing. It's a vicious cycle there. Another feeling that we're worried about is embarrassment. So, if the person receiving the feedback gets incredibly embarrassed, they will behave in a smaller, more guarded way in meetings and presentations and other interactions. You'll even sense it in their email messages because they will become less frequent. So, essentially, the person is freezing. They are becoming frozen because of the feedback, and they are avoiding future embarrassment, and their brain thinks that the only solution is to do nothing and to not take risk at all. So the feelings we don't want our direct reports to experience are overwhelm, confusion, embarrassment, and overall anxiety. And a lot of those have overlapping moments. Anxiety might touch all of those different emotions. Now, we have no control over the other person's emotions. We could say the kindest, most appreciative feedback, but because that person has had a lot of negative experiences in the past, they may still have those negative emotions, and we ultimately can do nothing about that. What I want to encourage you to do, though, is to be cognizant that those emotions are not helpful for developing people. Having your people feel overwhelmed and embarrassed and anxious isn't going to get you where you want to get. Sometimes it does get a short term change on people, but it's not long lasting. It doesn't strengthen the relationship. It doesn't create a positive culture or dynamic across the team. And it doesn't feel good to you. Let's suppose you have given similar performance feedback multiple times to a person and they are still not taking action, then you are likely ready to have this person leave the organization or find another position in your company. At that point, you do want the feedback to be incredibly direct and concrete and specific, and you want to deliver a specific solution at this point. But if it is the first time you are delivering this feedback, you want it to be delivered and framed as feed forward. What is feed forward? Feed forward is feedback. It's still feedback, but it is framed as futuristic. So you're only talking about what to do going forward. You're not focusing on the past events. And the second part is it's framed as positive. Here's what you could do to be stronger, more impactful, or get an even better result. Here's how you can accelerate your career. Here's how you can impact senior leaders more effectively. Here's how you can do more, reach more, be more visible, and achieve wild business outcomes. So it's about what is possible, and it's lifting their thinking and expanding. It is not focusing in on the failure of the past. What has influenced my thinking on this the most has been Adam Grant's work. Adam gave a great suggestion for how to frame feedback, and I'm doing this from memory. He says you come to a person and say, Mary, I'm sharing this with you because I have high expectations and I know you can do this. So, starting the feed forward in that format immediately opens the person up to wanting to change. The second thing that has influenced my thinking a great deal has been Dale Carnegie's advice around criticism. And if you want to revisit Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends book, I encourage you to look at it again because it is timeless when it comes to the piece on criticism that when you deliver criticism to people, you destroy the relationship. But when you frame it as feed forward, those are not Dale's words, those are mine, it changes the relationship. It enhances it, it deepens it, it builds trust versus destroying trust. But criticism hurts. You wouldn't want to be in a marriage where there is criticism. You wouldn't want to have a parent who is constantly criticizing you. Imagine having to go to work and make a living working for someone who is constantly criticizing you. So, the training programs that have been rather popular the last decade around courageous conversations, fierce conversations, radical candor, they are well meaning in wanting managers to be direct and efficient with keeping the standards high. And leadership has loved this because it keeps the pace of productivity high, but people are acting out of fear very often, and it creates a toxic culture if there's not a foundation of safety, love, and trust in the culture and fabric of the organization. We have seen many companies have to get rid of that style of feedback because it has led to higher turnover. Being able to deliver inspirational feedback is what makes teams high impact and producing at the highest level. And you only get that by being an expert at feed forward. Here's what we could try. Here's what we should experiment with. Here's what I know would help you and make you even more impactful. But coming from a place of genuine care, you still have to have a relationship with these people before you give even the most positive feedback. So, what should you do? Month one of working with a new team member, that should be a month of only giving positive reinforcement. Here's what you're doing well. Keep up the great work. Keep doing what you're doing on the items that you really enjoy. Still keep logging what you're noticing could be better, but give yourself time to build that emotional bank account, which is a Covey term, the Stephen Covey term, of building a relationship with the person so that they start wanting to hear what your thoughts are on what is possible. Plus, you want that to be a two-way street. You want them to feel comfortable sharing with you areas of opportunity that they see. We all have blind spots. We all have blind spots, but when you uncover somebody's blind spot, so here's an example. Let's say you pull Joe aside after a meeting and you say, "Joe, did you know you kept interrupting the client? You kept nodding your head like an order taker, and you came across very, very junior." That type of feedback is going to stay with Joe for the next 5 years. Joe will never forget that feedback. But if you come to Joe right after and you say, "Joe, in that meeting, you grabbed the client when you asked this question and when you made this comment. I have some ideas for how we could elevate you even further with that client to make you the go to person for this project. Let's set up some time to talk about that next week." Because I framed it positive with what Joe is doing right, Joe is feeling strong and Joe is starting to think about being open to doing even more things. When I see Joe next week and we sit down to talk about the ideas, I'm going to say, "There was a moment where I noticed you were nodding your head quite a bit." Instead of using that very positive, eager behavior, what if you tried silence and stillness and then asked a provocative question? It might sound like this, and you could demonstrate what you think Joe could have done better. But offering it as a consideration, an option, versus "don't ever do that again." We have, as a coaching firm, we come across some very interesting pieces of information on people. I remember a partner who called me up from a consulting firm and said, "Stephanie, you need to work with this individual. He runs down the hallway and it makes him look junior, over eager. And he did it once in front of a senior client. And now that senior client will never look at him the same way." Well, all of that I received, if that had been said directly to the junior consultant, that junior consultant would feel small and defeated and would remember that feedback for years. Instead, framing it as, "I want you to elevate your behavior and your communication to a level that inspires that person. Let's design a persona or a communication approach that will help that senior leader see you the right way." That's a better frame. That's a better frame versus talking about specific areas where they messed up. When you put a strong focus on past failure, the person immediately starts looking for, "Oh, how have I done that in a multitude of other arenas?" And they start to over index on that feedback. So, for example, the person who is told you're over eager and you're coming across really junior, if I receive that feedback, I would start thinking, "I know I did it in that meeting. I think I do that in every meeting. I bet I have done that at times, and that is why I'm not getting staffed on the right projects." And in doing this to myself, I become incredibly paranoid and I start watching myself and monitoring myself. And in the end, I end up becoming more junior in my behaviors because my brain is looking for evidence that I have a problem versus letting the brain focus on what is possible and anchoring to this future vision of what is possible. So let me explain another way to give feed forward. You could go to Joe and say, "Joe, you will be a partner in our organization. There's no doubt. Even if you just keep doing what you're doing, you will get there over time. I have some ideas for how you could get there even faster. Let's set up a time to walk through those." Now, Joe may be ready for that feed forward in that moment. And if Joe is, then you can go through, "Next time you're with a client, Try a slower walk. Try using the senior client's first name more. Instead of using a quick nod and jumping on the ends of their questions and statements, add a pregnant pause, a 3 to 4 second pause before sharing your reaction. When you offer those as options, like they're on a menu, that plants the seeds of change without saying this is a prescriptive solution for you. Remember this about motivation. It is hard to motivate people to change if you are forcing the change upon them. People resist change that they feel is forced. The other thing about change is people resist change they perceive to be negative. So if you say, stop running down the halls, then they say, oh, I've been doing something really negative. Versus if you frame it as that, what about trying more stillness or slowing down your pace? And then it seems much more positive that you are slowing down your pace so that your audience can keep up with you and that you can create a sense of calm. And that's an attractive attribute. I want to create a sense of calm versus don't create that sense of panic. By framing it as negative, don't do this, that makes the person believe that you are suggesting a change that's going to be hard for them. Let's suppose I want to give feed forward to one of my managers that I want them to take on more responsibilities. If I say, I need you to take on more responsibilities, that has a negative connotation to it. It sounds like I'm forcing the person to take on the change. It also sounds like I'm disappointed that they're not doing enough. But if I frame it as, Mary, 6 months from now, I'm going to be sitting in a room with the management team and I'm going to say, Mary is already doing more. She's taken on these responsibilities. She's speaking to more senior clients. She's already behaving at the level of our other senior leaders. She's not only ready for this, she's already doing it. And when I can say that, I can assure you the right decision will be made about your next step. Let me end with some very tangible things I want you to do. I want you to reflect on the people that you give feed forward to and put yourself in the mindset that they are capable of exceptional things and write down what you see them being able to do. Who are they becoming? And imagine them as great leaders with supreme confidence and great communication skills. And write down what you could see as possible for them. What roles could they take on? What do you see them doing in customer relations or in leadership team meetings or with the board? So now you are starting to envision big dreams for these people. Make sure that your mindset is in the right place. When you get ready to share feed forward with a direct report, it must come from a place of believing great things about the person. Let's suppose Mary has let me down in the past. Not only has she not delivered things on time, it's been poor quality, and I sometimes feel like she's not trying anymore. I could go into my meeting with her where I'm going to share performance, feed forward, and I could be rather negative and maybe even bitter and resentful. I need to clean up what's in my head before I go give productive feed forward to someone else. Let's suppose my leader has been hard on me and delivered criticism to me. It's very common that I then relay that criticism to my team. And this just becomes a cascade of toxic feedback throughout the organization. Even if you have received feedback that was not positive, clean up your head, your mental state before you go deliver feed forward to your team. You can stop the cycle of toxic feedback. You can be the one. And journaling about your people is best because when you do give feed forward, you want to give a few ideas, not overwhelm the person with 20 things they could do differently. Because often they're going to have ideas on their own. And if you've got 20 ideas and they have 10 more, that's so many different ideas. They will likely do none of it because there's too many on the table. Constrain yourself to give people two ideas at a time. Also, don't wait for performance review season to give people performance feedback. That's when people are stressing for weeks in advance. I work with people who are senior leaders who say they have a negative trigger, a negative emotional trigger to the word feedback because they are bracing themselves for what is going to hurt. I've had people say they don't sleep well during performance review season because they are so certain something awful is around the corner. But if you are giving regular feed forward to people, they will not be afraid of their performance review. And we don't want fear to be the driving force. We want that positive feeling of what is possible to be fueling great change in people, great development in people. All right, so the next time you have an opportunity to speak into your people, and that should happen this week, or if you're listening to this on a weekend, it could happen Monday or Tuesday, that you look for an opportunity to give your person feed forward in the most nurturing voice that you can. As you hear my voice speaking to you in a nurturing way, you can go cascade that going forward. Pour into your people what is possible for them and show how much you believe in them. It will feel great to you and even more incredible to them. Enjoy the ripple effect of that. All right, take care, everybody. If you are enjoying all of these lessons, but now you're hungering to turn all of this into skills and habits, habits that make this work intuitive and natural so that you don't have to think about it, then you want to join Speak by Design University. That's our coaching program that gives you private coaching, group coaching with me, group training, self-paced learning, as well as exceptional networking with other people like you. This program is for managers and above, people whose careers are on fire and they're looking to hit their next level and they want to do that sooner rather than later. Check it out at speakbydesign.com/join. That's speakbydesign.com/join, and you can start with us at the first of next month. We hope to see you there.